All right, so today on Living in 50 States, we have Jamie Lemmons, and she's going to be sharing insight on Chicago. So thank you for joining me today. I
You
really
are
appreciate that.
welcome. Thanks for having me. It's a beautiful city, Chicago, isn't it?
It is. And just to mention, Jamie actually found this amazing spot, and I'll be moving the camera halfway through to see the background. There's boats in the background and high rises. It's amazing. So thank you for finding the spot and
You
helping
are
me out.
welcome. I'm the queen of Chicago, they say. I love Chicago. Was born here, raised part of my childhood in the lovely state of Wisconsin, so not far from here. But I've been back in the Illinois area for a little over 20 years.
Nice.
Yeah.
And if you want to share a little bit about what you do, and then I'll get into the first couple of questions.
Certainly. I'm a real estate broker with Keller Williams Preferred. I work the city of Chicago as well as all of the suburbs. Chicago is kind of cool as far as real estate goes. We've got city proper, as I call it, north side, south side, and then we also have the west. So it's a big market
It
that I
is.
run. Yeah,
I'm still trying to figure out the all the suburbs. There's
right?
like Deerfield and Highland Park and so many little suburbs. It's like,
There are. I was saying to somebody yesterday, they're like, "Oh, what does your day look like?" And I said, "I'll be in 6 different towns." And to most people who aren't from here, they're like, What are you even talking about?" I'm like, "Oh, Chicago, Romeoville, Wheaton, Elmhurst." And I start rattling them off. They're like, "How do you even cover that many miles?" And I'm like, "Oh, it's easy. It's just what I do." And that's real estate, though, in
that's true.
Chicagoland.
The industry, especially in such a big city,
Absolutely.
that makes sense. So I was going to ask to get you started. What brought you to this state? I know you mentioned that you came from Wisconsin, but what brought you initially?
So I was born here, and then as I was obviously a young child, my parents decided to move to Wisconsin. Super common. We get people that bounce back and forth between Illinois and Wisconsin. It's maybe 30 minutes, the Wisconsin border, which Wisconsin is a whole different animal, beautiful as well. What brought me back to Chicago, actually, I was married at the time, had my daughter, and she was a little thing crawling around. She is now almost 20, but I'm going to age myself. So he came down for a job opportunity, and I'd worked for the airlines for a number of
Oh,
years.
very
It
nice.
was after September 11th. Obviously, the airline industry changed significantly. So that's what brought us back.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, and then I was going to ask you about the overall vibe of the city. So, kind of jumping from that right into an entirely different subject. But if you had to give the city an entire vibe, what would you say?
So it's so interesting when people ask me that. What I love about Chicago, I call us, we're a melting pot. We have what we call the Gold Coast, which is what most people know. If you're watching, reels and everything on TikTok, you see all the Louis Vuitton and the Burberry stores and, these beautiful restaurants. That's what we consider the Gold Coast. Chicago City, we have Chinatown, we have Little Italy. There's so many different areas. So when I say we're the melting pot, it's because it's Chicago is one big city, but there's little segments, and that brings a lot of energy. So there's a lot of diversity in Chicago. We've got another little niche area not too far from here that I do a ton of business called Boys Town, Wrigleyville, which is of course where our Cubs play. So there's just always a lot of energy. There's always a lot going on here. They can't see, but you'll be able to see later. There's people walking, pet friendly. It's just a really good vibe in Chicago.
It is. And I did read recently that it's one of the most walkable cities in the
Yes,
US. And then I was passing through on the way here and I saw all the sidewalks and people walking.
right.
It's an amazing city.
It is. A lot of my clients, especially if they're coming from out of state, because parking is a premium downtown Chicago, and because it's so walkable, most people, if they have a car and they come with a car, they end up selling the car. Our public transportation
Oh,
system in Chicago, phenomenal. Between bus, trains, Ubers, Lyft, we aren't as taxi heavy here. It's more Uber, Lyft. But if you want to get around, sometimes with the traffic and you're driving, you're better off jumping on one of the lines.
that's good to know. I
Yeah,
didn't think about that.
yeah.
Huh.
So super easy to navigate around Chicago without a vehicle.
Oh, okay. So then, overall vibe, would you say high energy, international, sort of basically high energy and just different
Definitely high
cultures?
energy, welcoming too. And
Nice.
I think because we are such a melting pot and we have so many different types of people from all over the world, like any big city would, and of course, you still people will say, "Oh, Midwest feel." I think Midwest people are super friendly, of course, but they are, and there's
Yes.
just a little bit of different hospitality because I think of that, and that's why too.
Honestly, I'm from Florida, and
Yeah.
not to hate on Florida, but people are so friendly here, and I have heard that about the Midwest.
Hmm.
And so, going to New York City and other places, other big cities, they're not as friendly. Here, they're so welcoming.
Right.
And I was at FedEx the other day, and an older gentleman started talking to me, and then I was somewhere else, and someone else was asking me about the stickers on my car, and they're so interactive,
Yes.
and it's amazing. It's just such a nice overall feel.
Absolutely. I mean, for a big city, I think that's pretty rare. I am fortunate. I do a ton of traveling. Believe it or not, a lot of it's real estate related. Our corporate headquarters or our international office is in Austin. So I'm in Austin 4 or 5 times a year, coupled with different conferences, and I travel a couple times a year with my kids. I always get happy to come home. In fact, I was just in New York City this past weekend. I took my two young adults now, and they had never been. And people will say Chicago and New York are very similar. But again, I think it's the people. The energy is still there.
Yes.
But again, big city, right? But every time I travel, it doesn't matter if it's work, if it's pleasure, I'm going across the Wisconsin border. When I come home, I'm like, I love Chicago. And even as this will sound crazy to you, as I drive in and out of the city, because I'm all over the burbs as well. There's no way you can't be driving on the freeway and you see all the high rises and the buildings every time. It doesn't matter. I'll be in the city again, literally 3 days in a row. I go, God, Chicago is beautiful.
It is.
The skyline is stunning.
It really is. And to kind of play on that, I can't believe I noticed something. When I'm driving, I have a trailer heading to the farmers markets,
Okay.
and in Florida, not that I'm a bad driver, but
Florida
I'll
drivers are a whole different ballgame.
yes, and I'll get honked at
Whole different.
occasionally
Uh huh.
because if I have stuff on top and maybe
Right.
trying to make a maneuver last minute, looking at my navigation.
Oh, yeah.
Here, nobody honks. Everyone is so patient. They all help
So
you
it's
out.
funny you say that because, well, Florida, again, I've driven in Florida, whoo, crazy town. Now, if you go over the Wisconsin-Illinois border, that will drive you crazy.
Really?
Everybody is a much slower pace. They say we
Oh,
Chicago drivers are nuts. We are fast, impatient, like the speed. Maybe it's because I live here. To me, I'm kind of like, okay, let's go. Like, let's go. Let's just be, let's be efficient.
yes.
If I'm on the road, I'm like, let's get there.
I did notice it's fast, but everyone's so friendly. If the light turns green and I'm trying to figure out something on my navigation,
They're not like,
no, nobody honks. I'll look up and the car will be 50 feet ahead. I sound like a terrible driver now, but
no, no, no.
just do a lot of multitasking. But
Right.
I'll look up and the car's 30, 40 feet ahead, and no one honked at me.
Yeah.
In Florida, the second it turns green, there's one or two people laying on the horn.
Okay.
So funny. What do you think the state is known for, would you say, in your experience?
Gosh,
Any specific food or anything?
I think it's a couple things. I think sports.
Okay.
Not all of our sports teams, unfortunately, have won major series and things like that. But one thing about the sports teams, even the Chicago Bears, I'm not a Chicago Bears fan, by the way, they're loyal as loyal can be. So
Good.
you will talk to anybody here, they're a Chicago Bears fan, even though they will lose and lose and lose, and they may cycle through their quarterbacks. People don't care. They show up. The games
Good.
are sold out. Same with the Cubs. Same with the White Sox. Same with the Blackhawks. The other thing, and I think this is absolutely true, is our food. I'm a massive foodie,
Ah, yes.
and most people, anybody that knows me knows, but people will say, "Oh my God, you were here and you were here." I'm always taking pictures of my food. I seek out, because Chicago is such great food, depending on if I'm working near Greektown, I'm going to stop at the Greek Isles. If I'm kind of in this area, Chicago Pizza Oven Grinder, my absolute favorite, upside down like Popeye pizza.
Wow.
So Chicago is known for its food. New York is, don't get me wrong, absolutely. It's a little bit different. So I would say sports and then also the food.
Okay, nice, very good. I keep hearing about the food and also the pizza. I've known that it's the best pizza here. Is that correct?
So it's interesting because I just said I was in New York this weekend, right? And I had not been in New York for about 20 years.
Okay.
And New York style pizza or Detroit style pizza, right? Very different. Chicago, yes, we're known for a really good, crispy, like thin crust pizza, but we're really known for our deep dish pizza. And there's quite a few of them. We've got Giordano's, we've got Lou Malinotti's, we've got Gino's East. That's what draws people here. So it's always funny when I have friends that, haven't either been to Chicago before or are coming to Chicago. They're like, give me your top three, blah, blah, blah. And because they know I'm the foodie, I'm going to steer them in the right direction. all are very different. And it is so famous, our pizza, that a lot of Gold Belly is a company, they ship it.
Oh,
So the Lou Malinotti's, the Gino Z's,
wow.
which is kind of cool.
That is
Yeah,
cool. And I'm going to keep that in mind to reach out to you whenever
you better.
to get some food recommendations.
100%, you better. There's no type of food that I don't eat. I love trying different types of foods. And again, that's what's cool about Chicago, that we have all of it. We've got a great little
Yes.
Russian tea house, Russian tea time. There's just so many. You won't not find what you're looking for based on, your cultural preference, your nationality.
That is cool. I was
Hmm.
driving, I saw Korean, I saw Armenian,
Yes,
which you don't see that very often. I even
right.
saw some kind of African.
Yes.
So cool.
Hmm.
So shifting gears a little bit, if you had to describe your city, so Chicago, in 3 words, what would they be?
Electric. This is a hard
It
one.
is.
Definitely electric,
Okay.
fast paced,
Electric, fast pace.
and hospitable.
Okay, I can see that.
Hmm.
Very good. Then, if you, or no, what are the most unusual traditions or local customs? Is there anything in Chicago
Mm,
or Illinois in general? Either one?
that's a good question. I can tell you, even though it's winter, our winters can be a little brutal. I Summer's a great time to visit Chicago, right? You can be outside, people are walking, hiking, North Beach. Christmas time in Chicago, there's just something about it, with the trees and the tree lighting. It's magical, and seeing the trees fall and all the lights and the Christmas decor. So Christmas becomes a really big deal around here. We've got several what we call Kris Kringle markets. They're little markets, and people tend to come down. The Walnut Room during Christmas time, another super famous restaurant that people go to, and it's kind of like a very traditional type thing. So the holiday time, the Christmas time, it's a big, big deal here. And we do get a lot of travelers, believe it or not, even when we've got a foot of snow on the ground.
That's surprising
Hmm.
because people keep telling me that it's beautiful in the summer, but to avoid it in the winter. I don't know if that's because they're trying to get rid of all the
So
travelers.
no, I think it depends, right? Being from Florida, like
Ah,
it's a shock for people that aren't from here. I mean, some people from Florida, other states, they've never even seen snow. So you plan a trip, let's say October. We could get snow in October. It's not uncommon. Our kids are trick or treating and they're trick or treating in the snow.
that is
Other
insane.
years we have it's so weird. Other years we will have no snow till like the beginning of December. So the whole global warming, maybe, I don't know what's going on. But for somebody that's not used to the cold weather, we actually had a really good winter last year, what I consider a good winter. I mean, I work year round, but we had like a really weird 5 day cold snap. So a lot of properties, if they didn't have the heat turned up high enough or they were vacant properties, I myself had a listing. I said, please make sure, I know nobody's living there. You've got your little remote. Let's
Oh
make sure the
no.
heat's up. Didn't happen. We had like 3 floors of water just, yeah,
Oh, because is that because the pipes
the
burst?
pipes burst. Yeah,
Ah,
if you don't have the heat up, right? So, or high enough. So that, I think it's just like a shock. It's not so much the amount of snow we get. If we get those cold snaps, it's kind of like, whoa, you just dress for it. I saw more homes some years in December, January, and February than I will even in the summer.
that is strange.
We have a lot of corporate execs, especially in the city, that relocate, and those are big relocation months, and they're moving. So they have to be in either by the end of the year or usually by the end of January. They're moving. They're coming. They know for job placement, they are going to look for a home. So I dress appropriately. My Ugg boots, I got my North Face jacket, I'm throwing on my stocking cap, and I'm off I go.
That's awesome. That makes
Yeah,
sense. If they have to move here during those months,
right.
that makes sense.
And I think there's better opportunity, especially because some people don't want to move in the snow.
Uh,
You might get a little bit better of a deal. Like it's opportunity compared to summer where families may be looking. You have less competition. So I'm like, let's get out there, throw on your boots, let's go.
that makes sense. That seems
Yeah,
to be a good time. Kind of a slower pace.
absolutely.
Huh.
Not as aggressive.
I see that. The what are any big misconceptions about either Chicago or Illinois? So I know a lot of people say that in Florida they imagine the Midwest as just cornfields and
Right. So that's another interesting one. When I have really good friends throughout not just the US that do real estate, but internationally. And if you watch the news and you live in Florida, California, you would think, and I say this to people, I go, you would think we're all dead. We're all dying, right? Because the
Yeah,
news,
tornadoes, the cold
right?
weather,
I mean, think about it.
survivors.
We had an earthquake like a week and a half ago. We had 24 tornadoes touch down.
24.
We had 24, which that's not normal. But if you watch the news, you would think either the weather's killing us or the crime and the violence.
Yes, I heard that one.
Like in any big city, there's going to be crime. Now, my kids, 17 and almost 2019, they love the city. Do I let them come to the city? Absolutely. It's part of the culture growing up. It's them gaining in their independence. Now, are there times that anybody shouldn't be out in any city, suburb? Yeah. There's just I always say nothing, good happens after dark.
True.
And then there's certain areas, right, which are known for a little bit more high crime. So if you watch the news, you think, again, weather, crime, we're all dead. So I always say that to my partners, like, oh, how's Chicago? I saw, you had a lot going on. I'm like, it's great. It's any big city,
That's
LA, San
funny.
Francisco,
Good point. That is a good point.
and it's all perspective. But you're going to have that. You're gathering a mass amount of people.
Yes. For being a
So,
big city, it's not bad.
right. So I think that's probably the biggest misconception. People are like, oh,
The
you saw in
crime.
Chicago? Like, are you okay? I'm like, oh, I'm busy as I'll get up. I'm like, let's go.
I've got to admit, when I was telling everyone that I was coming up here for 3, 4 months, everybody was like, "Oh, be careful, it's dangerous."
Right.
That was the number one thing that I heard from everyone.
That doesn't shock me. Again, if you watch the news, I try not to watch the news. I really, even background noise, because then you start seeing stuff flash on the screen, and I'm like, I'm not. And I'm like very much in a mindset and like at positive energy. I'm like, I don't even need that draining me. Though I'm aware of my surroundings.
Good.
There's certain times that I'm not going to go out and show a property, when it's dark and things like that by myself. That's just normal common sense. But that's probably the biggest misconception is that the city is just absolutely horrible.
Yeah, that is funny. That is definitely the number one thing that I heard myself as
Yeah.
well. So, getting into history and culture, has anything historic happened here,
Oh
or?
my gosh, so much. I mean, most people know about the Chicago fire, and that is super famous. One thing about Chicago, we have such great museums and history here, and they really do a good job of like showcasing that. We've got the Museum of Science and Industry, the Art Museum. There lot are more of the south side of Chicago is starting to build a lot of cultural centers.
Oh,
And we've got a new library that's coming together, and that's going to be like a very much rejuvenated area. So Chicago does boast a lot of history, but again, most people know the Chicago fire, and for those of you that aren't aware of it, you'll have to look it up.
I saw an article one time on
Okay,
social media, and I clicked on it. And I was reading about it, and my exact thought was, "Why did we not learn this in school?" Because it was such a big deal.
right.
It was, blocks. I can't remember how much
Oh,
burned, but
horrible,
terrible.
horrible.
It's so crazy that we don't learn about that in,
Hmm.
history class. Or it's a
Right.
shame that it happened, but interesting.
Yeah.
What are some interesting or unusual laws still in effect? If you happen to know any,
Ooh, laws.
like for
So something, and it's kind of real estate related though, but I too, it's like one of those things that you can go either way. I just had the question last night. Family that is coming from Singapore, looking to buy a property here, and they said we want to Airbnb it. They want a high rise, high amenities, pool, like top notch, high amenities, $1 million to $2 million condo. And they said, but we probably won't be here year round, so we're going to want to Airbnb it. Chicago is not super friendly, Airbnb. Any condo, high rise, attached dwelling, HOAs are not. And people ask me all the time because there's plenty of other big cities that do allow it. What's my opinion? Could it be the tax base? Could it be they're not getting the hotel tax? I don't know. Could it be that, the owners of units do not want kind of transient people coming in and out? That could be it, right? Because some buildings will allow long-term rentals, some even won't allow that. So that's kind of an interesting thing. I get a lot of out-of-state investors, and they'll be like, I'm looking for an Airbnb. I want it turnkey, furnished. And I go, yeah, you're not going to be able to rent that in Trump Tower, or you're not going to be
interesting.
able to rent that in the Tribune building. No, that they're not going to allow it. So yeah, kind of interesting.
It is. I never thought that certain cities were not as friendly to
They
investment
100%
rentals.
are.
Very interesting. I'm going to keep that in mind as well. I'm learning so much from you.
Good.
I love these interviews. Any historic sites that visitors must see? Kind of
Oh
going back to
gosh.
the
You
jumping
know, I
around a
don't
little.
have historic sites, but we had initially talked about meeting Navy Pier. That's
Maybe
just a
too.
really cool, if you're talking about playing tourist, my kids and I still play tourist. They love the city, so sometimes they'll go. And we didn't do it this summer, but I wouldn't be surprised if they asked me before they all start going back to school. We just play tourist, and we will come. I book a hotel. We go to Navy Pier. We go to the Museum of Science and Industry. We will walk down the Gold Coast and go in all the cool stores. And we will go to the Bean. Do you know what the Bean
Oh
is?
yeah, the big metal thing.
Yes, so like that's a photo op. North Beach, which is right, you probably passed it coming off Lakeshore Drive, is super well known. I mean, we actually have beautiful beaches, right? Because we're right here in Lake Michigan. So there's so much like touristy type things to do that there's way more than enough here. Most people will say you can't come for a weekend. It's just not enough time.
Oh yeah, no, I could definitely see that.
Yeah.
And I love that you actually stay locally, like in a step, not in your own home, but in a hotel.
And it kind
Full
of like
experience.
makes it the experience. We actually, I don't know if it was not on Christmas, but like right after Christmas between New Year's, we usually try to do some family vacation. We played tourist right after Christmas before New Year's Eve though, because New Year's Eve and New Year's Day is a little wild down in the city, and lots of parties, lots of
Hmm.
for maybe the younger people, maybe not me anymore. But we just played tourist, and it was beautiful walking down the streets, light snow kind of falling. We shopped, we ate, we tried different things. We did their favorite pizza places. But you do, I mean, that's what's cool about it. I can play tourist and I live here.
That is nice. That does say something about the city.
Absolutely.
What are some notable universities or colleges?
So, gosh, we have a lot. And I can tell you, so he's going to be a senior this fall. And of course, he wants to go into real estate, which I'm like, that is fabulous, Dylan. Though you need a business marketing background, got to run it like a business. So he said, I'm going to school somewhere in Chicago. We actually have the University of Chicago, that we have DePaul. There's so many, not public, but private.
Okay.
And the acceptance rate to get in, it's very competitive. Our universities here are known typically medical but there's one not too far from this way. There's one over University of Illinois. There's so many. The state of Illinois, though, has awesome in-state colleges as well. They're not in the city, though. They're a little bit more way south. My daughter attends one that's about 3.5 hours outside of the city, Western Illinois, in a little cornfield, Macomb, Illinois. And she chose to go there because her criminal justice background, and that's what the college is known for.
Oh, okay.
So, but we have students that come internationally to go, especially downtown Chicago. Though even some of the ones out in the middle of the cornfields, we get a lot of international students. I think just Chicago is a pull for that, right?
Definitely. A lot of Greek people here, I noticed,
Yes.
and well, of course, every other culture as well. But since my dad is from Greece, I specifically realized that. And in Florida, you don't see that at all.
Okay.
And so, yeah, I really noticed it attracts all kinds of people,
It
all ages,
does.
all types of people. It's really impressed me. I did
Okay.
not have any expectations at that Midwest big city.
So I think that's kind of awesome what you're doing, because if you go in without any expectation, right, then your mind is kind of blown, because you don't have these preconceived notions of what it should be or what it's going to be, or you just kind of you're able to be present and enjoy the experience.
You're right. No, that is a very good point. And so far, this is actually becoming one of my favorite cities, and I haven't even
Yeah.
explored that much yet.
Right.
It's San Diego, Boston, and this is going to be either replacing one of those two for the
Okay.
#1 spot.
I love Boston.
Oh, Boston's beautiful.
Love Boston.
It
Though
is.
New York, again, I hadn't been there in 20 years. It was just a nice little weekend getaway too. And there's a lot of parallels, right? Boston, the history. I mean,
Oh, yes, for
but
sure.
I think it's awesome what you get to do. I mean, who gets to do that? I think it's fabulous. Some
Thank
people
you.
never leave their hometown or
You're
their
right.
state.
And that is a shame.
Think of how many people never experience that. I think there's something to be said how enriching travel is.
It is. It really Changes your perspectives.
It does.
It expands your horizons. So much self growth.
Well, I think too, it's empathy and understanding different cultures, right? And that the world is bigger than just us.
Yes.
And I've often said, and why I've traveled with my kids since they were young, there should be no price tag on travel. Yes, there is, and blah blah blah. You get on flights and you book hotels, but the experience that you learn, you're not going to learn that in textbooks. Yeah, you can hear about the Chicago Fire, but unless you experience and immerse yourself in it, you won't get to experience that truly.
I agree 100%. It should be encouraged more for young
Absolutely.
people after college or after high school to just take a road trip. And
Right.
that you're also forced to, learn and do things on your own
Yes.
and get more self discovery. Just
Problem
so many
solving.
benefits. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Dealing with a flat tire, for
Right.
sure. Oh, yeah. If you had to leave your state, what would you miss the most? So either city or state. It
Gosh,
refers to either.
if I had to leave, again, the foodie in me is saying food.
I was gonna say,
I high energy person, like being around people, super social. So for me, it's just the energy of the city and even suburbs. We've got
okay,
amazing suburbs, amazing schools. And I think I would just miss that. What's ironic, and some people know this about me, but most don't, is that I have like, uncles and aunts or a few cousins throughout the state of Illinois, but none of my parents, my siblings, my nieces, like they're out of state. So when I came back to Chicago, it like I kind of transplanted here with almost starting over and not
completely on
knowing
your own.
anybody.
Oh
So
yeah,
people often have said like raising your kids by your single mom, raising your kids by yourself, like why wouldn't you have gone where your family was? And this became home again, and the kids did so well with the school and just everything. I couldn't imagine just leaving. So, and my family's close enough over the border in Wisconsin and way further
that's
up that
true.
I go, and again, being a different lifestyle and so much slower pace, that's my way to get grounded again.
Good.
But I love the busy and the high energy and the activity. I would miss that.
I can see that. You seem very extroverted and definitely uh, people person.
Yeah. And food. And food.
And food, throwing that in there. It's funny talking about Wisconsin, the border. I drive across the border for a couple farmers markets, so I
Okay.
go to I went to Kenosha once,
Yep.
but I go to Milligers every Sunday.
Milligers.
Milligers.
Yes, I know exactly.
I've been trying to figure out how to pronounce that right.
Milligers.
Milligers. I'm glad you
Yes,
said that.
yes.
Milligers. And also, what's the other market? I go there for Lake Geneva.
Yeah. Oh, Lake Geneva
And
is.
Williams Bay.
Yes,
And
I
it's
know it too.
beautiful, but as soon as I cross the border, it is a slower pace. Literally right across the
It's a
border.
completely different. I call it getting grounded again. And with aging parents, I'm tending to go back and forth. But it's an hour, 50 minutes, whatnot. It's not like I'm having to jump on a plane. But the whole like mood, the speed of the car,
Oh, yeah.
the waiting to pay for something in a grocery store, everything is different.
I couldn't believe it.
Everything is different.
The driving was slower, and then when I would stop for gas and I'd try to buy a bottle of water,
Right.
I'd be in line, and it would just take forever.
Yeah, they're beating their own drum there.
Yes.
But it's kind of nice. So it's funny you say Lake Geneva. Lake Geneva is a very popular lake house destination for Chicago people. For people who want corporate executives to have lake houses that they want to get away, because it's maybe an hour from here.
Peaceful.
They can get away. And of course, post-COVID, being able to work remote, having lake houses has become like the big thing. They're almost impossible to find, but Lake Geneva has been a really big pull for a number of decades. And that area, you probably know if you're out there for the markets and stuff like that. I mean, the traffic there, the amount of people that congregate to that area, and I bet you 90% of them are from Chicago.
That makes sense, yes. I actually ask a lot of them. I'll say, where are you from around here?
Right.
Majority of them are from Chicago.
Yeah, they're all, we call flatlanders. Everybody says, Illinois is like all flat land. They call us flatlanders. Most of the people that are even going over like Kenosha, Pleasant Prairie, Kenosha's beautiful because they've got the harbor.
Oh, yes.
A lot of Chicago people, that's where they dock their boats.
Oh.
They don't necessarily dock, and they'll get to see, after we're done here, behind us, beautiful harbors here, because it's cheaper maybe to do it in Wisconsin. So that's where they go.
Oh, okay.
So you get a lot of Chicago people there as well.
Wow. It was beautiful. The drive, it's more rural and
It
just
is.
peaceful.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I love it. Oh no, actually, what are the best cities or towns to live in your state? So, or city, so you can do suburbs.
Okay. What are the best?
I would say best in regards to, I know that's kind of dependent, but more so in your opinion, because I know that's,
Okay. So I move a lot of people in from out of state. It's funny. People will say, oh, everybody's leaving Illinois. No, they're not. I move more people in than out. Typically, when I get on my consultations, people will already say to me, I want to live in A, B, and C. And it's always school driven. Now, our suburbs offer a lot amazing schools, restaurants. It's for people that have lived in the city and no longer want the hustle and bustle. Or they're like, we're having kids, we want a yard. We don't want to have to take our dog down the elevator from the high rise building. So, a lot of really super popular areas in Naperville. It's a southwest suburb. They've got a
yes,
really, if you've been down there yet, they've
beautiful.
got a really cool little, what we call the River Walk. Great restaurants. It's kind of a very niche area. Beautiful homes, higher price point. Another, which is suburb, Frankfort, Illinois. That's where I'm at.
Frankfurt.
Again, amazing schools, really cool little downtown area. They have a market on Sunday. Um, but really, I mean, Chicago, a lot of people absolutely love. We call it Lakeview, which also AKA Wrigleyville, which is where the Chicago Cubs play.
Uh,
So if you've not driven past there, I mean, you've got a very, 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 very old baseball stadium right in the middle of the city. It's not far. It's 10 minutes from here, Wrigleyville. And they have done a great job of keeping that historic monument beautiful, fun place to watch games at, awesome hot dogs. But literally, for the folks that live there, you walk out and you can go right to a baseball game.
oh, nice.
So cool. Parking, a little more challenging, but a lot of people love Lakeview, that particular area of the city. Walkable restaurants, bars, public transportation, minus parking. But a lot of people, if they're looking to live and be in Chicago, that's where they tend to go.
I love that it's just so walkable.
Hmm.
Aside from the parking situation, I love it. That's so
Right.
nice. That's how every major city should be.
I agree.
The industries or sectors. Oh, actually, before I get to that, I was going to mention Highland Park and Deerfield. Do you like
Yes,
those? Those
I do.
are
So
so nice.
that is what we call the north side.
Okay.
And that's why Chicago is separated city proper. Then we've got the north side, which is the Highland Park. A lot of people know Barrington, Winnetka. Winnetka is like all over the news. It's like the highest price property income base in the entire state. Very nichey. It's right on Lake Michigan, but way further north. So I do. I work the northern burbs as well. A little bit
Okay.
more selective. Most of my business is past client referrals, agent to agent referrals,
Nice.
past client, things like that. But I do go up there as well. I have lived north side, south side, southwest side. So when people say like, how can you work all these markets? Because
That's
I
awesome.
know them because I've lived them, right?
Yes.
And so, but the north side, higher price points, completely different type of market than south and southwest and city.
It did seem that way. I have a market, Garfield Ridge,
Yes,
and then I have one in Deerfield,
yes.
and so all different areas, and it's an entirely different feel.
They're 100% different field. That's
Entirely
why
different demographic.
when I get a lot of people that come here, they'll say, just can you pick an area or a neighborhood for us? What do you think? And I'm like, that is a loaded question. So sometimes people know. They'll say, I want Lakeview, this is what I want, a multi-unit, blah, blah, blah. Or I have to be Gold Coast, I'm working with Microsoft, or I'm working in River North. But for the people that are uncertain, they're like, I've never been to Illinois in my life. I'm like, let's get you a no rental. Because Chicago offers so much, and until you like live, work, breathe it, it's massive.
Yes.
Like for me to say, oh, I think we should plan to here, I could suggest a suburb. You could be bored out of your mind, right?
That's a good
So
point.
you kind of have to live, work, and breathe it.
And then you can determine where you want to live.
Absolutely.
That's a good point. No, great advice on that. What industries or sectors drive the economy?
Gosh, I mean, there's so much. We are fortunate. We have two airports here, Chicago O'Hare, which is massive international airport. You mentioned Garfield Ridge. There's Midway Airport, which is like right near Garfield, like the Ridge area. So a lot of people coming and going. We've had corporations leave. Taxes are a little bit higher in Illinois, which people talk about too a whole lot. But we still bring in a variety of different industries here. So that's never a factor. A lot of corporate executives, things like that. It's so interesting when kids go away to college. My daughter will be one. She's gone away to college. She has always loved Chicago. She said, "I'm graduating in 2 years. I'm moving to Chicago." That is super common. Whether once they graduate high school, they go away to college. Even if they go out of state, they're at Florida State, if they go to Arizona State, they always seem, us Midwestern people, we if we move, we come back. And the young people, they immediately want to live in the city. Again, the whole energy and whatnot. So that continues driving the economy as well. But Chicago does kind of have it all.
It seems that way.
Mhm.
I know that in some southern cities, that relied on coal, and then that went, many towns just dried up, and
Right.
but it's such a flourishing city,
Hmm.
and it seems the restaurant industry is flourishing. The Just every single industry seems to be booming here.
Right.
It's nice. The creative and fun questions. So, if you had to plan the perfect day in your city for a visitor, what would the itinerary include? And this could be like a hidden gem of a restaurant, whatever you think.
Okay. That's a loaded question too because it offers so
It is.
much. So obviously North Beach, Lakeshore Drive is really what runs along all of Lake Michigan. You can get all the way up to the Wisconsin-Illinois border. You can go all the way down past the city. I mean, I think you can rent bikes. Bikes are so easily rentable here. Starting with a really nice bike ride that you could bike up and down North Beach in Lakeshore Drive. I think that would be a great way to start. Brunch, Russian Tea Time is one of my favorite restaurants.
Russian tea time.
Russian Tea Time,
Hmm.
if you've not been there yet, just a very different type of food. Obviously, very well known, very historic. Um, Starting with like a something light scone and little noon tea. Um, if you can get, depending on season, right? Obviously, the Bears, even though I'm not a fan, I'm going to say that again. They play typically Sundays.
Okay.
If it's a Sunday and you can get in a noon Bears game, that is awesome. If not, if it's baseball time, right? Cubs play right down here. Our White Sox Stadium is a little bit out of the city. It's city, but it's more south side. Um, Hitting a sporting event. I think that would, if you're not into sports,
All right.
definitely hitting the Museum of Science and Industry or the Art Museum. If you're definitely more into culture, we've got some beautiful theaters here. If you're into that sort of thing, that you can catch a show. And then for dinner, Chicago Pizza Oven Grinder. Telling you, it's my favorite. It's a non-traditional. If people are in TikTok, if you look it up, it's like just a very well-known, super old restaurant, cash only. Typically, never you can get a reservation. Small little place, but the best.
I am definitely going to check that out.
I would cap my night off there.
All right. No, that's a great itinerary. I like that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
The typical only in-state moment that you've experienced, or uh, I've heard certain things, like going back to, not to mention something negative, but the crime thing. Someone
Okay.
told me that everyone's been mugged at least once. So like,
Hmm.
is that something, or a typical in-state moment, like maybe seeing a certain type of state bird often, or like it could be any category, something that
Hmm.
Illinois or Chicago,
It's known for.
yeah, that typically happens in this, region.
Gosh, that's a hard one.
It is, and it's very general, but
It is. Gosh, you've got me thinking right now. I've not been mugged.
okay,
I
good.
can tell you, no, I have not. I've not been carjacked. Again, if you
Okay,
watch the news, you would think we all have. Definitely not the case.
that's what I keep hearing.
Have I been towed? Yes. Because of lack of parking, super common. Most likely, you're getting a ticket if you're
Mhm.
parking off the beaten path or doing something you're not supposed to be doing, or paying your meter, or getting towed.
Okay,
That's such a typical
something parking related.
Chicago. Yeah, it's going to be parking related, or getting your car crashed. In fact, my car had a hit and run recently by a tow truck driver.
Oh
Waiting for
no!
parts. It's been like over a month. You
Out of
probably didn't see it when we pulled up today. Super common. Car accidents are like pretty normal. Though I'd say New York,
oh yeah,
that's like a whole nother.
different world, different level for sure.
Yep.
Then I'm coming up on the last few questions.
Okay.
So imagine your state as a person, how would you describe the personality? So it's kind of similar to the second or third question about the characteristics, the three words to
Okay.
describe. But if they were a person, how would you describe the personality? Like extroverted,
Yes.
crazy, vibrant.
Chicago is incredibly vibrant, a
Okay.
little eccentric, very humble.
Oh boy.
Hmm.
Huh.
Very humble and high energy.
I see that. High energy for
Hmm.
sure. You were very quick with those three.
Can you tell I love Chicago?
I can. But I mean, that's why you're perfect for this, and you're so, knowledgeable on the area. So I'm really glad I got to interview you.
Thank you.
If your state had its own soundtrack, you don't have to name multiple songs. On the question, I wrote songs, but
Okay.
one song that sort of represents it, possibly two.
Mm,
I know it's such a versatile city that it's
yes,
probably hard to pinpoint one song.
it kind of is.
Would it be country music? Would it be,
So
hip hop?
I love my modern country. I'm not gonna lie. In fact, the cowboy rap genre that's going around right now. I'm not gonna lie, love that.
It's pretty good.
I like it.
I kind of
I
like it
said
too.
something to my kids. They are not in even the modern country. I'm like, I'm dying to take you to Nashville. They're like, no. I love the modern country. But gosh, let me think. I mean, that's the other thing about Chicago. Most people don't realize we do concerts at Soldier Field, which is where the Bears play. We've got Northern Island, which you and I kind of talked about.
Yes.
They have kind of a pain getting there and getting back, especially in and out of concerts, but awesome. Our United Center, they do concerts there. So Chicago is super well known. We bring in some pretty big hitters. I mean, the Swifties and
The
U2
Swifties.
and oh yeah, all of those.
Everybody.
So if you love music, a lot of people they come to the city and they're coming to see Morgan Wallen and all of those. But the whole Frank Sinatra, the Chicago,
Oh, yes.
and that sums it up. I mean, we are enriched in history, right? But classy, I like to
Yes.
say as well. But because we have so many different types of people here, it kind of covers it all.
That is a great answer. I can see it. It's
Hmm.
interesting because, being here for a month,
Right.
as you're describing it, I can actually see that myself,
Hmm.
where it is very classy, it
Hmm.
is very versatile. Um, yeah, it's really interesting how people are so respectful of each other.
Hmm. Not every day, but for the most part, right? I think it goes back to that whole Midwesterner like hospitality. I posted something yesterday on my Facebook. There's like a group on Facebook. It's like Midwest versus everybody else, and I posted like I'm the type of person that when I'm walking in a crosswalk and I see a car come, I kind of do the wave and I'm like thank you, but then I like hurry because I want them to think like I'm really hurrying because I am. That's like such a Midwesterner thing. So it goes back to like the whole hospitality and like the holding doors open for people most of
Yes.
the time, right? But just being like nice to people,
Yes.
and I don't know if that's lost in certain areas or certain towns, but like the Midwest, there's still something to be said for that.
It is very different. I don't believe,
Mm,
like, it's drastically different. Not just a little bit, but drastically.
okay.
I can't believe it. Another example, I got a flat tire, and I kind of wedged myself in this area, and there was a car that was parked kind of outside their lane a little bit,
Okay.
and I was thinking, it's they were really close to me, but I was in a valid spot, so I was thinking if they get upset, it's on them. They're
Right.
outside the lines. So I was kind of irritated, expecting them to be mad, but while I was doing my thing. But anyways, um, the owner of the vehicle ended up being an older gentleman. He was
Okay.
walking out. As he was walking up, I was like, "Sorry, I got a flat tire." And he's like, "Oh no, you're fine." And then he started talking to me,
Hmm.
and he was like, "Oh, there's a trailer store down the road, and it was like a
He was
two
trying
or
to
three
help you.
minute yeah." And I'm not
Yeah.
used to that. In Florida, there's it's just not typically like that.
Okay.
They'd either get upset at you or they just want to get in and get out.
Right. You're
It's just
inconveniencing them.
and
And again, it's not everybody, but in general, how I've raised my kids is like how you treat people. I'm a big believer in
yes,
karma too. And holding doors open, or if you see a older person struggling, or, their husband's getting the wife out of the car, I'll say like, "Do you need any help?" Not out of a disrespect, but like he might be able to use a little extra hand.
that's amazing.
It's just little things like that. I think that the Midwest is known for, and obviously how the were raised, and how I've raised my kids. Like my son, do not ever like slam the door on your sister or anybody. And I mean, now he's the 6 foot 3 17 year old. He will never walk in a door first. He holds it, his
That's
sister walks
amazing.
through, I walk through. I mean, that's just, but again, obviously that comes from upbringing, but I think too it's very Midwesterner.
The values are definitely different than the rest of the country. It's nice. It is a
Yeah.
nice, refreshing. If you could change one thing, this is actually my last question. Oh no, there's a couple more.
Okay.
But if you could change one thing about your state, so we're talking about Illinois, what would it be?
Gosh, I get this a lot. I feel it too. The taxes. We have high taxes here. So when I've got someone who wants to move from Florida, let's say, and our schools, awesome, right? Majority of schools, very high rankings, amazing education, which is why we've got the public universities and whatnot. When there's a $350,000 house, but the taxes are $8,000 or $9,000, people are like, oh my God, I'm not moving there. It's kind of a sticker shock, right?
Yes.
So it's not just even like our food tax or gas tax. It's a much higher tax. But then I'll say to people, yes, but you could maybe go to Indiana, obviously Wisconsin, we're sandwiched in here. And maybe the schools won't be what you hope for curriculum. So you're going to send your kid to a private school. You're paying it one way. You're either paying for private school or you're paying the taxes
I see.
in the state of Illinois, where the schools are phenomenal, right? So I think the only thing I would change is taxes, right? I get people complaining all the time, and I get it. But with that, I always say, okay, high taxes, maybe, depending on school districts. Anytime there's good schools, you're going to build quicker equity and better
Yes.
equity, and it's going to hold value. I don't care if you don't have kids, and you may say to me, we will never ever have a child. We don't care. No, you do care, because when you go to sell it, you want to make sure you bought in a smart area,
Yes.
whether you've had kids that have processed through the school system or not.
That makes sense.
So taxes.
And it seems to be, would you say there's a direct correlation where, higher taxes, better schools? With that being
Typically,
said?
yes. Illinois is definitely that case. There's some communities, maybe suburbs, that the schools rank a little bit lower. I find when I'm moving people into the state, they've already said, we want you to plant us in A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And I always come from curiosity, and I'll say, can I ask why you chose Naperville, Frankfort, Tinley Park, Burr Ridge, and Glen Ellen? And they'll go, we looked at the schools. Those have the highest ranking, blah, 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 blah. And I go, okay, I already know the answer. But I want, right, them, and then I can help guide and whatnot. But there is a direct correlation with the school rankings versus paying for private schools. Some people still do it, whether it's, they want to send their kids to a Catholic school or for a variety of reasons. But there's a correlation to that with real estate.
That makes sense. Yeah.
So taxes are a little high here, I'm not going to lie. But with that,
All the good,
it goes,
yes.
yeah.
The good with the bad.
Mm-hmm.
I get that. Last question.
All right.
So I know I've jumped around a lot with the
I
questions.
love it.
I've got to reorder them a little bit.
No, you're good. You're doing
Thank
great.
you. If you could create a state-themed cocktail or dish, what would be in it and what would you call it? So would you do like a little bit of pizza, a little bit of
Oh, I love to cook, but I really love to bake.
Hmm.
It's kind of my therapy when I'm not working a million hours in real estate
it
or
is
traveling.
nice.
It's for some reason like it's an act of service for others. Like I wouldn't bake you a apple pie, and you'd be like, I don't want that, or like I better get in my oven and bake or something back. Like, right, food is like a gift, an
I
act
see,
of service.
yes, that's true.
So if I had to make something Chicago, we are known for phenomenal steakhouses in Italian.
Steakhouses.
Uh-huh.
I have not seen many steakhouses.
Phenomenal. If you want some good steak recommendations, let me know.
Definitely.
Amazing steak, but Italian as well. I would probably create
Like a plate with a little bit of everything.
a little bit of everything. I mean, I'm
Smooth
like a buffet
Italian.
girl. I'm not gonna lie. Like I want to sample a little of this and a little of that. It would absolutely have to do something with pizza. There's no question mark about it. We're known for Garrett's popcorn, so that might be like the dessert component. Have you ever heard of Garrett's?
No,
Oh,
I was going to ask you about that.
oh my God.
Garrett's popcorn?
Mhm.
Garrett's popcorn.
So there's probably, gosh, in the city, I bet you we have a dozen, maybe even 15 if you want to find Garrett's, Google. It will come up with a whole bunch. There's now one in each airport. They
Okay.
didn't always have them in the airport. Garrett's started off as this family-owned little popcorn stand. You know, butter, cheese, caramel corn. They're known for the Chicago mix, which is caramel and cheese. But so that would be my dessert. But you need to check out Garrett's. Garrett's like exploded because they were on Oprah's favorite thing list
Oh, okay.
probably 20, 25 years ago. Now, if you get, you know, a good size container and, you know, I'll ship it to a client who's, you know, like moved to Greece or wherever, it's like $100 to ship the popcorn. Plus, it's like for
But is
like
it
a
just
little container.
regular popcorn, or is
So
it a
they do
little
butter
sweeter?
popcorn.
Okay.
You got to be extra on this. So their cheese, phenomenal. Your fingers will get orange. That good. But they're known for their caramel corn, or what they call the Chicago mix. They'll take the cheese and they'll take the caramel, put it kind of in the same bag.
Sweet and savory.
Yeah, so good.
I'm gonna try that.
So that would be my dessert component. But I would kind of do a little buffet. I would have to say, like, we'd have to have a little steak, a little pasta. Rosebud is great for Italian food. I mean, there's so many.
I was recommended to go to Rosebuds. That's
Yeah,
on my list.
so good.
I've got to go there for sure. And also, some sandwich shop. Are you known for sandwiches here?
Yes and no.
I see so
We
many.
have some good delis. So one of the most iconic, everybody knows about it, city, a little bit more north, Manny's Delicatessen. And Jewish deli, corned beef, phenomenal, matzo ball soup, and really good deli. They too ship now because they've gotten so famous.
Smart.
And awesome bagels, like the real boiled bagels, not the kind you're going to buy like at the grocery store. Like they're legit bagels.
Nice.
But Manny's Deli.
Manny's Deli. Okay.
You need to go to Manny's.
I will check that out. Huh. Last question is, what is the most photogenic spot in Chicago? Is it the Navy Pier, looking at the view
The
of the
most
city? Or-
like
I know there's tops of high rises where you can
yes,
see the
the
city as
Hancock
well.
building people rave and absolutely love. Whether regardless of your political what side of the fence you're on, Trump Tower, they have a beautiful rooftop up there. You don't even have to like Trump to go up there and enjoy it. Beautiful, like such great views.
Nice.
Now, Navy Pier, which we talked about, they've
Check
got
that
their
out.
very well-known, beautiful Ferris wheel. It's kind of cool, just like going up there again, going back to like playing the tourist. A lot of people just like to go by the bean, and you know, great photo ops. It's mass amount of people typically, but it's pretty cool. It doesn't matter.
The bean.
It's one of those you could go like a dozen times and it would still be a different experience.
So that's like the Bull in the financial district in New York City?
Yep,
Kind of
pretty much.
landmark?
I mean, who doesn't know the bean? It's kind of a crazy name, but who doesn't know it, right?
Yes. No, I definitely, even in Florida, I knew what the bean.
Okay.
But I have to explore. I have to check it out.
You do, and you're going to have to like, don't ever like just go into uncharted waters. If you're going to Greek Town, be like, hey Jamie, where would you go for Greek?
Okay.
Like, you gotta seriously.
Thank you. I appreciate
Yeah.
that. Wow, that was great. So much
Good.
information. I have to bring a notepad next time and take notes.
I told you I'm a talker.
Thank you.
I love, and again, it comes from passion. That's all.
No, I can tell. And honestly, I'm really grateful that you were a guest because your passion comes through.
Good. You're
And
so
a
welcome.
lot of people are going to get a lot of value from everything you shared. So thank you very much.
You are very welcome.
And before we end, I feel bad not showing the
You
viewers
have
the
to pan
background.
them.
Yeah.
You absolutely have to pan them. They've
Let's
got
take
to see
this.
what they haven't been seeing.
So ignore the table in the background. I'm just going to unhook this. And I'll just take the phone, actually. So look at this background. We got the high rises, the boats, the little birds. Look at that. Look at that, Chicago.